This is Beth Berghan. Welcome to Leadershipisation. I'm coming to you from Sydney, where I'm on my laptop today, so maybe that's why we had a bit of a false start there. I'm an internationally awarded leadership and communication coach, and I'm here live every single Tuesday morning at 11 a.m. Sydney time to talk to you about all things leadership. Hey, it's grand final time here in Australia. And so we've got AFL grand finals, it's a big weekend coming up, and we've got a rugby league grand final. We've also got the Rugby World Cup happening in France right now. So sport is really at the fore of the conversation. And what I find is that that's always about a leadership conversation. It's always about what role is the captain playing, what are the other people in the team doing, and who are we going to rely on to lead the way? Who will demonstrate leadership, particularly when it's stepping up and there's as much at stake as the premiership for the whole year or, being the world champion in the case of the Rugby World Cup. And so that leads me to this diverse subject of what is leadership. Now, as you know, I came up with the word leadershipisation because that allows me to talk about all things leadership. And so let's start this conversation about what is leadership. It's a deep, it's a diverse, and it's a regularly discussed topic. So let's have a look at what it might sort of be. Leaders mobilize people towards a vision. They get the team going and aiming with whatever they're doing towards achieving that vision. Leaders create an emotional bond and harmony. They create a culture that people want to be part of and they feel attached to. Leaders build consensus through participation, through bringing people together to participate, to having people understand that each of their tasks is linked and that they are actually participating together. Maybe another one is this: leaders develop people for the future. Yeah? Because I think they do. And they also guide and influence. Leaders guide and influence others individually. They guide and influence teams, but they also guide and influence organizations or businesses, particularly if they're in high-level positions in them, and most particularly if the business belongs to them. So there's lots more. Leaders model behaviors. Leaders challenge the process. Leaders empower others. I could go on. Leaders are also human beings. They're also human beings. Sometimes they don't provide feedback. Maybe they're thinking, I'll wait for the performance review. And they don't understand that prompt feedback is going to allow for improvement. Prompt regular feedback, especially when an error is happening, is going to allow for improvement. Maybe leaders are too busy for their teams. Perhaps what they need to learn to do is to manage their calendars so that they do have time to be there, to be fully present for their teams. Maybe they're too hands-off. People want them to be more involved. Maybe they're too hands-on and they're micromanaging and everybody's going, leave me alone, leave me alone. There's a real balance that a leader has to be able to establish between too hands-on and too hands-off. And that takes some practice. First, you have to be aware of it, and then you need to practice it. That's kind of like maybe some leaders are too friendly. And if you're too friendly, then there's a danger that people will take advantage of you. Or maybe you're too cold. So again, it's about that balance and setting some boundaries there. Leaders are also given to failing to define the goals or the vision of the organization. So people are unproductive. It slows everything down because they haven't made it clear exactly what they want from their team. Leaders can be really unsure about what motivates people. And so they don't understand the things that they need to do to be able to get their team all on board, all on the same bus, so to speak. For many leaders, I think maybe it's about the money. And what we know, particularly out of the pandemic, is that, that work-life balance has become really, really important. But people also want to be valued and recognized for what they're doing, and they want to stretch and grow. So as a leader, there's some things that you need to be aware of. Some leaders aren't necessarily walking the walk. Maybe they're not being the role model that we expect them to be. Like if what happens is that the company rule is you don't eat at your desk, the leader should be the first one going to the lunchroom. Sometimes as a leader, when we get all busy working, doing the things we think we need to be doing, we can forget that we are actually a role model. And that kind of extends to our integrity. So it's not about putting down the bosses, putting down those who are higher up the chain. It's actually about acknowledging perhaps you don't agree, but you do need to carry out what you're being requested to carry out and to look at ways that you can achieve that with your team. I often remember when my sons were going to school, if the parents don't support what the teachers are wanting to do, if the parents don't support what the school is trying to do, the kids won't either, because they're taking your attitude into every single day at school. So it's a bit like that when you're a leader. And in that case, you are the leader in the family because you're the parent. Some leaders make a mistake of putting people into roles too quickly. They just go, oh, we've got a gap to fill, let's put this person in. And what happens is that it makes more work for everybody. So it seems like a solution, but it actually is a real hassle for people. Some leaders, they also try to do everything. Try to do absolutely everything because they're wanting to prove themselves, because they feel as though, I don't know quite how to delegate, and I feel a bit weird about asking people if they'll do this stuff, even if it's in their task list. And so they do two things. One is they get overwhelmed themselves. And because they're overwhelmed themselves, their stress levels go up and their frustration levels go up. Remember, I said earlier, leaders are human beings. Leaders are human beings. So they're not perfect. They're imperfectly perfect. They're on their way to perfection. The other thing that happens when we don't delegate is that we actually rob our team. We rob others of the opportunity to stretch and grow themselves, because maybe they need to work on their time management. Maybe they need to work on their delegation. So we're robbing others of the opportunity to grow. The other really critical thing that I notice quite a lot in people that I coach and in groups that I work with is this. It's really easy to misunderstand the role of a leader. Really easy to misunderstand it. Now, some of that is because we're human beings. Yeah. Some of that is because maybe we didn't get a really clear role description. Perhaps we haven't had clarity from the rest of the organization. Perhaps we've fallen into the role and we may be a leader because it's our business. And so we're kind of misunderstanding that role. Some of that is because we're human, some of it because we haven't been curious enough and asked all of the questions. The really important thing to understand when you move into a leadership role and as you stay and move through that leadership role is this. There is a different set of skills that is required. Not only to become a leader, not only the first time that you get into a leadership role, but consistently over and over and over. You're going to have to develop a whole heap of skills. What got you to that point in your career isn't going to take you to the next level. So it's important as a leader that you're aware that you're going to have to continue to work on developing those skills for yourself. The other thing that I find really occurs at this point is imposter syndrome. I have a lot of clients who are kind of going, what am I doing here? Why am I doing this job? I don't think I'm up for it. The key thing to remind yourself of is you were chosen for the role. You're in the role. Make it yours. Step into it. Identify where you need to develop new skills, where you might need to develop new opportunities. I'm going to have a drink before I have a coughing fit. Oh, thank you. So there's lots to consider about this whole leadership thing, yeah? What is it? What isn't it? There's lots of common challenges that are shared. And what we know is that there's a new set of skills that you're going to need to grow and develop. No matter how long you've been a leader, no matter if it's in the same organization or different organizations, things change. Technology changes. The things that you might be expected to do, the conversations you might be expected to have, all of those things are going to change. So as a leader or an aspiring leader, we need to get you ready to face that so that you're dealing with that one constant, which is the change. All of this made me think about a book that I've read a couple of times, and to get it out, I got out my copy of James Kerr's Legacy, and it's subtitled What the All Blacks Can Teach Us About the Business of Life. There are so many awesome gold nuggets in this. And I don't know about you, but I read a book. Yeah, I read a book and I underline and I write things in the margins, and that means that I can go back to it. You know, I used to do a highlighter pen as well, but sometimes that fades. So now I'm more into underlining. And what that reminded me about when I read it, and it's quite early in the book, but it's really stuck with me through my own leadership journey and when I'm talking with other people, is this. Vince Lombardi, who is a legendary coach of an American football team, I think it's called the Green Bay Packers, but I could be wrong. The Green Bay Packers, he talked about that only by knowing yourself can you become an effective leader. And that really resonates with me because my belief is that it all begins with that self-knowledge. It all begins with that self-leadership. I need to understand who I am so that I can develop my values. I can develop who I am. And I believe that to such a large extent that it's actually in my coaching model. I've got these 3 parts of my coaching model. Pause is where we start, and it's this self-reflection. It's looking at where are you now? Who are you? Who do you want to be? And what are the skills and the changes, the behaviors and the changes to your mindset that you might need to get yourself there? It really all starts with you. Now, you'll notice when I was talking about some of those common challenges with leaders, that what we came back to was this belief that, hey, as a leader, you're traveling a different journey all the time. If you're going to grow as a leader and be challenged as a leader, you're going to need to work on you personally, not only you professionally. So there's a real lot to reflect on here, yeah? A real lot to reflect on. Leadership is individual. It's really what you understand it to be. And it's a changing thing. It's like a conveyor belt. This is what leadershipization is all about. All things leadership. By leaders, with leaders, and for leaders. So wherever you are on your leadership journey, I'd love it if you would continue to join me live here again next Tuesday, 11 a.m. Sydney time. It'll be Australian Eastern Daylight Time by then, because they're changing over with daylight saving this weekend. So that would be 10 a.m. in Brisbane and 1 p.m. in Auckland, New Zealand, and 8 a.m. in Singapore. I look forward to seeing you then. Again, I remind you, if you've got questions or comments, please pop them in the comments below where this is, and I'll do my best to get back to you as quickly as I can. I'm really happy to take your feedback on board. And if you've got some questions about leadership or all things leadership, happy to discuss those with you. Bye now. I look forward to seeing you next Tuesday.